Not only is Tsu Surf regarded as one of the most skilled battle rappers of all time, he's also arguably one of the most street-connected hustlers to ever come through the rap game. Nowadays, battle rapping isn't as widely celebrated or renowned, but that does not mean it isn't just as important. While it might not be as mainstream as it once was, battle rap leagues have racked up tons of committed fans and even gotten high-profile endorsements from artists like Drake and Diddy. This is exactly how Tsu Surf made a name for himself. Before that, Tsu was a kid growing up in Newark, New Jersey, just trying to make it. He was in the streets from a young age when he saw a man get shot to death in front of him. Surf has spoken about how that one moment was really pivotal to him and had a huge effect on his psyche. By the time Tsu was a teenager, he had already forged gang ties with the Rollin' 60s neighborhood Crips, a connection that would follow him for the rest of his life. Surf's gang connections put a major strain on his family and personal relationships, which led to him catching a gun charge when he was only 18 years old. With the baby on the way, Surf was locked up for nearly 2 years, and since he was a teenager, he was forced to get a tough education being incarcerated with grown men. Surf called this time in jail gladiator school just to get some insight into what it was like. One silver lining is that Surf's time in prison really pushed him to start taking music seriously and gave him the motivation he needed to attack the battle rap scene with full force. Surf built up so much success on the battle circuit that his fame started to cross over into the mainstream. Surf ended up on Joe Budden's radar, who, before he was a notorious media personality, was another Jersey rapper who was signed to Jay-Z and Eminem. Joe Budden took Surf on tour with him, a great look for an MC whose previous exposure had been limited to battle rap fans. The problem was, Surf had never fully put the streets in the rear view, and by 2017 he got hit with an attempted murder charge after he tried to shoot an op over some street beef. The situation landed Surf back in jail, but he actually managed to beat the case. But that was just the start of his issues, because in 2018 he was a target of a hit that almost cost him his life. Surf was back in his hometown. It was broad daylight. He pulled up to a stoplight when he heard a gunshot go off. Shooters appeared at his passenger side and ended up mag dumping Surf, hitting him 5 times. Surf survived the shooting, but not without major trauma to him. Not only was he left with huge injuries, but between the attempt on his life and the attempted murder charge, his music career was pretty much derailed. After all that grind, all Tsu Surf had to fall back on was his street connections, meaning he went all in on being an active gang member in Newark. A few years after Surf's music career started declining, he got approached at his Jersey City crib by federal agents. Surf barricaded himself in the house with the woman he was with, leading to a full-fledged standoff where he refused to give up. After negotiators got involved, Surf eventually surrendered and was arrested on RICO charges related to Surf's ties in the 60s. Surf is accused of being one of the gang's leaders, opening him up to RICO cases ranging from drug trafficking to murder. The evidence was so overwhelmingly incriminating that Surf's guilty plea led him to a potential sentence of up to 30 years. Surf decided to take music serious while serving time, but now his career might come to an end for almost an identical reason. Meanwhile, OMB Bloodbath might be one of the most promising rappers coming out of Houston. Not only did she come up with a unique style that blends rapping and singing, but she's tied into the history of one of H-Town's most culturally important and historic neighborhoods. Of course, I'm talking about 3rd Ward, which is not only the hometown of Beyonce and Solange, but is also home to TSU and the University of Houston. Unlike the upstanding reputations of Beyonce and TSU, Bloodbath's whole come-up is currently mired in serious trouble because of federal charges targeting both her and her alleged hometown crew. Things really started to take off for Bloodbath around 2016. She just survived being shot in the head a year earlier, but began to get attention after she took part in the trending So Gone challenge and went viral. One thing about OMB Bloodbath is that she definitely knows how to hustle and does not waste opportunities. She took advantage of the momentum and used it to record more music, and then leveraged that to get a deal with Interscope. Bloodbath's troubles kicked off when an innocent bystander was killed during a drive-by shooting. That bystander was a 53-year-old man named Sam Johnson, who was shot dead while walking in the 3rd Ward neighborhood. Police initially believed Johnson was the target of a hit ordered by OMB Bloodbath, but it turned out that he was just caught in the crossfire. A crew of gang members had pulled up to shoot a house belonging to a rival crew called the Young Scott Block Gang. 3 shooters with AR-15s crashed their stolen car into a drainage ditch but kept shooting, then carjacked another car to make their getaway, throwing a woman and her baby into the street before driving off. Bloodbath gets tied into this because she was recorded passing on orders from an an incarcerated gang leader, where she directly mentions paying off the youngins to carry out a hit. This situation put a huge spotlight on the 100% Third Ward crew, also known as 103. Apparently, Bloodbath was acting as a go between 103 and the shot caller who was locked up. If this is true, this means that OMB is high up in the 103 hierarchy, where she's actively tasked with paying off shooters and organizing hits. And it also means that she has a major target on her back. In March in 2023, the feds arrested Bloodbath and 5 other members of the 103 for RICO charges connected to the 2017 shooting that killed Sam Johnson. The whole RICO case obviously put the brakes on OMB Bloodbath's career just as it was taking off. Bloodbath was on track to be a local hero, but her criminal case definitely cast a dark shadow over her come up. While it remains to be seen if OMB Bloodbath can beat the case against her, she's definitely fighting for her life. If convicted, it's very possible that she might be sent away with a life sentence. On June 18th, 2018, Jimmy Wopo was sitting in an SUV after hanging out with his lawyer. He was hyped to kick off a multi-city tour and was on the verge of signing a record deal. By every metric possible, Wopo was on the way of becoming the next big thing out the city. 15 minutes later, after hanging up with his lawyer, Jimmy Wopo was shot dead. Killed by his ops, murdered in the same neighborhood he grew up in. After Wopo was killed, there was an outpouring of grief from fans and peers. Both Pusha T and Juicy J expressed their condolences, showing off how many generations Wopo touched with his music. It wasn't until years later that we got a fuller picture of the circumstances behind Jimmy Wopo's assassination and the level of street that he was directly plugged into. It turns out Wopo wasn't just a street rapper, he was a suspected gang leader and a ruthless one at that, punishing anybody who would disappoint him. Jimmy would spend his entire life split between his grind as a rapper and the lifestyle he embraced as a hustler. By the time he was in 9th grade, Jimmy had been shot 3 times after a fight broke out and someone started shooting into the crowd. Just a couple years later, Jimmy faced a second attempt on his life after being shot in the leg, stomach, and arm. At the same time, his song Walking Bomb started to get some internet shine, and Wopo began to see a different way forward. While he tried to take music more serious by squashing beefs with his ops, he still faced legal threats and drug conspiracy charges that would occasionally derail him. By the time 2018 rolled around, Wopo looked like he was on the cusp of a major career turning point. Not only had he collabed with Wiz and Ray Shremmerd, but his fan base was growing. It looks like Jimmy might be able to leverage his early success into something much bigger. What a lot of people didn't know is that Jimmy was actually in the middle of a gang war with the rival Pittsburgh crew, and that his murder was likely revenge for all the violence Jimmy and his clique unleashed across the city. After Jimmy was killed, a federal indictment revealed that Wopo was suspected of being the leader of a local crew called the 1100 Gang, aka the Sneaky Gang. The allegations essentially accused Jimmy Wopo of using his music as a way to intimidate rivals, while his crew ran wild through Pittsburgh Hill District and asserted their control over the city. At the time of Jimmy's death, 1100 was involved in a street war with the Wavy Boys. The beef between 1100 and the Wavy Boys goes back years, dating back to an issue over heroin that was stolen in 2012. And the years since, the two gangs hit each other hard, murdering rivals and escalating to the point where Jimmy Wopo ordered the murder of a Wavy Boys member named MMB back in 2016. It's very likely that the back and forth between 1100 and the Wavy Boys culminated in Jimmy's assassination, and his death was retaliation for the years-long gang war between both crews. Of anyone on this list, it's easy to see that Jimmy might be the most notorious and dangerous Kingpin level rapper we've ever seen. While he could have used rap as a way out, Jimmy Wopo was active, and he was not above taking out his ops or even members of his own crew.